I've been a grassroots coach for almost 10 years now. August 2024 will be my 10th year coaching grassroots. I have played at every single level of youth soccer, from recreational to travel to competitive to DA, which was pre-MLS Next, or what is MLS Next now. And what I'm going to share with you quickly is the lessons that I've learned over 10 years as a grassroots coach. I've also done, as a coach, every single age group in youth, from 2 years old all the way to UPSL, USSL, and I've even trained professional players. So I'm going to share you 10 years of experience as a grassroots coach, all the lessons, all the scars, and I hope you get a lot of value from this. And I'll also add very quickly that I've trained even professional players like Luis Nani, Benji Michel, Dom Dwyer, a bunch of guys, even Kawan Basil, the generational talent from Brazil. I don't have every answer, but I will share hopefully a lot of insider pieces that will help you if you're a coach, or even if this might even help you as a parent, just when it comes to grassroots stuff. And let's start off with the lessons of what is grassroots, or what do I define as grassroots. So grassroots for me, and I'm going to be looking to my right because this is where I have my notes, but grassroots for me is in USU soccer. It's recreational, it's developmental, it's competitive, the levels of it that does not play in the acronym or badge leagues that promote exposure to players. So for me, this encompasses like 90 to 95% of the country. So when I talk about like acronyms or badges, these are things that promote exposure. This would be things like MLS Next, ECNL, EA, EAL, USYS Pro. You pick your league that promotes exposure, right? That's what I'm talking about when I say the badge or acronym leagues. And then from a grassroots perspective, it's anything that is not that. So anything that is not those leagues, that's grassroots, at least in my perspective, okay? So lesson one, I have 6 training rules that I've created over my time in grassroots. So this looks at things like, first one, coaches need to arrive at least 20 minutes on the field with their equipment. So you get to the field, you bring your equipment, so your balls, your cones, whatever else you're going to be using for the day, training bibs, goals if it's there, you put it together, and that would be, you need that on the field 20 minutes before. Then when you're actually putting your practice together, so you're on the field, set up as many activities as possible. So you've created your session plan, you've organized it, you then want to put together as many activities as possible so there's less delay for the kids. Third one is make the warm-up fun. So when we're in grassroots and you're not working with the top kids, then you need to make sure that the kids are having fun, and the best way to get them into is to make sure that the warm-up is fun. So they're enjoying the process of being in a warm-up, they're playing, they're having fun, and my go-to warm-up to make sure that they're having fun is to play. I love to make them play 1 versus 1. They got to compete right away. They have a blast when they do that, and they play. Kids want to play, so let's provide them the platform to do so. Number 4, make sure when players are arriving to practice, you go up and greet every single player. Normally, I would say, hey, the players come and greet you, but this is pay-to-play America, and when you're in pay-to-play America, you're going to have to go greet the players. Ask them first. Well, first, make sure you say hello to them, shake their hand, high five, whatever it is, and then on top of that, ask them how their day was. How was school, right? If you can do this with every single player, you're building that connection, you're building that relationship. I think that's critically important. Next one is give a 10 to 20 minute buffer. So if you know practice starts at 6 o'clock, what I like to do is communicate with all the players, like, what is my desired outcome for practice, what we're going to be looking for from training, what we're going to be doing in training. I give a 10 to 20 minute buffer to make sure that we don't have an issue with this, where players can then just get into the flow of it. Because kids are going to be late, there's going to be issues, parents are going to be stuck in traffic. You pick the poison, it's going to happen. So if you give that buffer, you allow more players, if not all of them, to arrive for training. Now, number 6, when you're actually in the session, especially for grassroots players, keep your talking to a minimum. Don't be looking to overload the kids. Don't be sitting 5 to 10 minutes talking to players. Just give them 1 to 2 minutes at most, and then get them back to playing, right? So 30 seconds to a minute is what you're looking for. That's basically it. We don't want to give them more, give them quick, precise information back to playing. We're not talking about elite level players. We're talking about grassroots. Kids that want to have fun. So if you're sitting there yelling at them or constantly over communicating and spending 3 to 5 minutes or longer talking to them, they're not going to enjoy the session. They're going to have less fun. And at the end of the day, we need to make sure that kids in grassroots are having fun. That is the most important thing. Okay? Next lesson. Lesson 2. Understand that as a coach in grassroots, whether it's, even if it's not grassroots, it's badge leagues, but we are in pay to play. Your customer isn't the player. Your customer is the parent. And I bring this up because it's actually nuts. I've had situations where the player is super happy, loves the environment, loves the team, loves the training, whatever it is, but the parent is unhappy. So who wins in that fight? The parent. The parent will then take the player out of the environment and take them to a new place. This happens all the time. So you have to understand that even though you're coaching kids, you have to be selling to parents, and I'm using the quote selling here, to make sure that you are a better fit than X, Y, Z person that the parent is also considering. I've seen it happen multiple times where parents literally pull their kids from my program, even though the kid loves it, but the parent is upset about some sort of circumstance. So as a coach, be mindful of this. And things that you can do to help gain favor is make sure that your training is super organized. And parents love to see like equipment. They want to see everything organized. They want to see stuff placed. The more equipment you have, the better. It actually looks more professional in their eyes. And then you get to second part, build connections with kids. So if you can build that connection, you're showing the parent that you have interest in their player. Okay, but understand that the client or the customer isn't the player, it's the parents. Point 3. Now, this is huge because, and this is why I wanted to share this video or at least make this video for you, or if you're listening to an audio, awesome, is one of the biggest regrets that I have as a grassroots coach is that I did not learn from somebody in a better position than me. Big mistake. So it took me 8.5 years of trial, tribulation, errors, mistakes, pain. I mean, you pick your poison. I went through it and I didn't have somebody like guide me through it. So I think mentorship from a coaching perspective is huge, like unbelievably huge. So if there's somebody that you can learn from in a better position than you in the pay-to-play environment as a coach is huge. That's one of the biggest regrets that I have is that I didn't have that. So, and I think part of the challenge is we all have egos. And in fact, I was one of those guys. I had a big ego. I was one of those dudes like, oh, I'm the best. You can't touch me. I've done this. I've done that. Yeah, you can learn something even from a quote-unquote not good coach, right? Straight up. But what I am advocating for in this third point is get mentorship. Find somebody that has done this, somebody that you feel like adds tremendous value. Learn from them. Even if you have to pay them, learn from them. It will be worth it in the long run. And like literally, I wish I was exaggerating, but I'm not. It took me 8.5 years to actually get like a formula down that I believe in. 8.5 years from the day that I first started coaching grassroots to now. I'm in my 10th year, by the way. It took me 8.5 years. So I could have maybe done it in 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 days. Instead, it took me 8.5 years. I don't want you to make the same mistake. Sure, if you're a grassroots coach and maybe you don't know what you're doing, or you're getting into it because you're a parent that wanted to get into coaching, or you're a former player like I was, and you said, hey, I want to coach, learn from somebody in a better position. Even if you have to pay for it, it'll be totally worth it. Okay, because just that opportunity is unbelievably important. And like to summarize this point, I was asked maybe a month ago at this point if I would pay $80,000 to learn from somebody like Jürgen Klopp. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, I don't care if it's a week, if it's a day, if it's a year, I would pay it. Right? If I wanted to get to a level like that, I would pay that money in a heartbeat. It'd just be that important to me. So I think it's critical for people to understand, especially if you want to coach. Okay? So continuing that with point 4, okay, is some things that you could want to see from this is like, how do you deal with parents? Right? So let's talk about the actual performance environment that I would want to learn, or I wish I did learn. How do you deal with parents? So a great example is we always talk about like the 24 to 48 hour rule. I'll give you this nugget. So I have a formula that I use with parents, and my process is this. If I know a parent's upset about playing time or game time or whatever issue with the game, I say, okay, we're going to wait 24 to 48 hours. Most people follow that same thing. However, I give them the upfront piece, and I say, hey, we're going to keep this dialogue civil, okay? We're not going to be yelling at each other. We're going to be having a conversation. If at some point we get above that point, the conversation ends immediately. It's over, right? So we want to make sure this is civil. We're actually having conversation, not an argument. We can have a disagreement, but we should be able to have a conversation. If it gets above that, conversation finishes. And I tell the parent, like, if you come super like aggressive or mad or yelling, you lose the right to have a conversation because it's a conversation. Right? I want to make sure that's like abundantly clear. So that's like a huge piece. So if you can do that as a coach and say, hey, listen, do this, right? And if we can have this type of dialogue, we'll have a conversation. You make your life easier, you make the dialogue easier. And that way you can actually solve problems and maybe actually address concerns. Okay, another one would be like, how do you deal with kids that don't want to be at practice? You know how many times that I've had to work with players that didn't want to be at practice, so by not wanting to be at practice, they're giving like 20% effort? Well, how do you deal with players like that? I wish I would have learned way sooner. Now, I will say one of the things that I did do is I trained younger players, which I'll expand on here shortly with other points. Okay, how do you prepare for games, right? So like everybody talks about going to games. Games can be fun, it's awesome. But how do you actually prepare for them as a coach? Well, I didn't know, and I wish I did. What time do you arrive? How do you make substitutions? How do you talk from the sideline? How do you actually coach from the sideline? A lot of people think that it's just joysticking and screaming and yelling. Well, to be completely transparent with you, that's not coaching, my opinion. Okay, so another one would be like, how do you write training sessions and deliver age-appropriate training? And that's huge because this is one of the things that I didn't figure out until 8.5 years into my coaching journey as a youth soccer coach, was how to actually figure this out. Like I had an idea in my mind, but I didn't know actually how to deliver it and scale it. Now I know how to do that, and it's because I took time to figure it out. It took me 8.5 years to be able to do that. So there's so many more things, but having that mentorship, even if you have to pay for it, learning from somebody that has been in the pay-to-play program, coaching for years, you can shortcut all of this pain and suffering. Okay, so I think that's critically important to know. And just for reference, because somebody's going to ask, I even have the U.S. Soccer C license. Okay, so I don't have the B, I don't have the A, I don't have the Pro, okay? But I did my D license at the end of 2017 into 2018, if I remember correctly. And after the D license, I was like, I'm never touching a U.S. Soccer license again. And the only reason why I went back to do the C was because my business partner was like, hey, go take it, go get the piece of paper. So I did it, and it does help, right? I'm not going to sit here and say it didn't help, but I don't feel like it actually prepares a coach. So I don't think the grassroots, the D or the C, prepares a coach for what you're actually going to experience in pay-to-play as a coach. And that's huge. So having a mentor that can say, hey, listen, great example would be 3 times I've had a parent come up to me after a game and tell me, Kyle, F you. How do you deal with that? I didn't know, but they were upset, if I remember correctly, about playing time or didn't agree with whatever I was doing. Fine. But I never expected somebody to come up to me on 3 separate occasions and tell me, Kyle, F you. Right? That would have been great to know that these type of things could have happened, but it just happened. And the first time I was shocked. But it's like, what do you do and how you handle it? Okay, so those are just things to think about, okay? Now, next point, this would be point 5. Every single coach probably, or majority of them, have the aspirations of wanting to work with top talent. So getting to an MLS academy, for example, or college, or higher, okay? The reality is 99.9% of coaches in grassroots are not going to be working with top players. You're going to be working with second, third, fourth tier players. I don't mean that disrespectfully. I'm trying to highlight that you're not going to be working with the top kids that want to be at practice, that practice every single day on their own. You're going to work with kids that go to practice because mom and dad make them come to practice, or that only practice at practice. So you have to think about how do you make sessions that are perfect for these kids, which I'll expand on later, okay? And they haven't fallen in love with the ball. They haven't fallen in love with the game. So we have to help build them. They don't have that culture yet, okay? So you need to make sure that we make it fun and we meet them at their level. That key phrase there, really both of them, make it fun and meet them at their level is so important. Okay, I want to make sure that's clear. Point 6. So when you do the U.S. Soccer licensing, and I did my C license, it was expected that I had half a field. Do you know how many coaches have half a field at practice? I would say you're probably lucky if you get a fourth of a field. I would say the average coach, in my situation, we get an eighth of a field. So if we're looking at a full-size field, you're getting an eighth. That's a 30 by 30 space, or 30 by 25, something like that, right? You're getting a corner of a field. And that's what most coaches are probably getting in pay to play, just from my experience. So you're also going to have very limited equipment. You're probably only going to have cones, balls, and training bibs, unless you bring like hurdles and ladders and stuff. But primarily, you're not going to have a bunch of equipment like full-size goals or mini goals. So you're going to have to make do with a lot of stuff that you don't have, and you're going to have to adjust your training appropriately. So just be aware of that. And then another piece would be, you might have 12 players on a team. So you may have 12 on your roster, but then on average, you're getting, let's say, 5 to 10 at practice. So let's say you practice Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Well, you might have 12 on the team, but you're getting 5, 7, 10 on average at practice. To be completely transparent, it's kind of crazy to think about. As a grassroots coach, remember, I'm not talking about the badges. I'm talking about in grassroots. So I could probably count on my hand the number of times I have gotten a full squad at practice. A full squad. I mean, everybody's at practice. It doesn't matter if it was like 2014 or 2012 or 2011 or 2008 or UPSL, whatever. Probably 10 times in my 10 years of doing this that I've had a full squad at practice. Everybody. It's bonkers to think about. So being in grassroots, you have to be prepared for the reality of you're probably not going to have it. Okay? Next one is, make sure that you are prepared to work with low-skilled players. And I'll share a formula that I have shortly to deal with that. And by deal with it, I mean provide the best experience ever. Because grassroots needs to be fun. Like, you're going to hear me say this like kind of over and over again. But if training is not fun for grassroots players, they're going to quit. I've seen it happen multiple times. This is not my first time. This is not my first rodeo. This is years of doing this. And I mean on the daily, every single day. Okay, so now we're going to point 7. I always try, I don't do it every time, but I try to ask these 3 questions for players 5 to 12. Okay, so if I have a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, even in Beast, so we have a program called Beast, I'm wearing the shirt. Like we do 4 times a week training, so we just finished our training this week. And at the end of the practice, I asked these 3 questions. First one, did you have fun? And probably every kid said yes. And then I said, why? And they were like, well, I got to play 1v1. I got to practice my dribbling skill. I got to win the tournament. I got to do whatever it was for them. They get to explain why they had fun. And remember, we're talking about young kids. They need to have fun. So like parents, even if you're listening to this and you want to just learn about like coaching insight and whatnot, your kid has to have fun. If fun is not the priority, we're missing the bigger picture here. And there's a reason why 75% of kids on average are quitting by 13 years old. They're no longer finding it fun and they need sport. Now, second question I'll ask is, what did you learn today? And the reason why I'll ask this question is because I think it's great for kids to like think about what they're doing in practice, but it also, as a coach, as a grassroots coach, gets you to see if the players understood what you were trying to get from them at practice. So if your desired outcome was to improve 1v1 situations attacking to goal, just as a very quick example, well, if they say, well, I got to practice my 1v1 and I got to shoot. Hey, you're seeing if they're connecting the dots of getting to that desired outcome of what you wanted from your practice. Now, that wasn't the best example, but it's just an idea for you to understand, hey, this is why we should ask this question, because it's checking for understanding to see if the players are actually paying attention, and it's also self-reflection. That way you can see if what you were doing was taking effect from a mental standpoint. Okay? And just remember, the key thing here, the goal as a grassroots coach, in my opinion, needs to be fun and learning. So development, progression, whatever you want to call it, fun and learning, that's what I call it. Okay, point 8. So I create the 4 following models before the season starts in August. So almost every single club starts August, maybe slightly before August. Whatever it is for you, that's fine. What I do, though, is I create 4 models. First one, I try to create a team seasonal plan. So this kind of explains what the practice schedule is going to look like for the parents. And then anticipated events and training focus. So by creating this, you're telling everybody, here's our training schedule. Here are our anticipated events, whether it's a league, tournaments, whatever it is. And then what we're going to be focusing on. And then a lot of times what happens is you get a lot of questions. But at least you're being upfront and honest to say, hey, this is what we have. This is our practice. These are the events. And here's what we're looking to do from training. Now, just be prepared that you're going to have to deal with questions that are going to come back from parents saying, well, I want to see the kids work on passing and work on this or whatever they want. But just understand that I think it's good to have open dialogue with parents because, again, they're the customer. Now, second one would be set parent rules. So they need to know when they can communicate with you and what that time frame looks like. So I used to do this thing, it was a big mistake, was parents would text me or call me at 10 o'clock at night and I would talk to them. And I was like, and I would do that for years, literally years. And I'm like, I think it's good to have an open relationship with parents, like to have that communication, but they have to respect your boundaries as well. And you don't want to have that happen because it's like, then it's just like an open can of worms. Parents will contact you at any point. They feel that they can talk to you about anything, about your coaching strategies, about why little Johnny didn't play attacker when he should have, right? You don't want to have that. You want to have professional communication. So now my rule is, you can talk to me basically 9 to 5. Maybe I'll answer up to 7. And if somebody texts me late and I feel the need to answer, I say, hey, I normally don't do this. I'm making the exception in this case. I make it very clear because that way, again, you're setting those boundaries so they don't think they can do it all the time. Okay? Next one. Make sure you set training expectations for players. What do you want them to do at practice? Now, you're going to have to remind them multiple times because they're not going to get it right away. You might have to say, hey, example, I'm expecting 100%. I'm expecting you to give effort at practice. It's kind of the same thing, but I think kids relate them differently. So, and it is whatever it is for you, right? Like me, I would say, especially with young kids, hey, I expect you to give 100%. I expect you to have fun, and I expect you to take risk. Those are my 3 things for young kids. And that means when I say creativity or really take risk is, dude, it's okay to dribble. You can take people on. You can go at people. You can try and play 1v1. I'm not going to yell at you for it, especially at practice. Do your thing, right? That's cool. Do what you need to do to play football. Enjoy football, right? Be creative. Take risks. Do those things. The final one would be set game standards. So game standards would be like, what time do you expect them to arrive before the game? What time do we start warm-up typically? What is the protocol for travel? So like if you have a travel tournament, everybody has to go to a hotel. No freaking parties, and I made this mistake before. No parties at 11 o'clock at night, please, when you have an 8 game. An 8 a.m. game. You guys need to be responsible. We're going to tournaments to compete or try to win, not having parties and stuff. Like, I'm not saying you can't go enjoy, but let's be responsible about it. And actually, to great effect, I did this, and I set out an entire sheet. It was like a PDF, and I sent it to parents. And it was funny because at this tournament, we had 3 kids show up 5 minutes before kickoff. So they started complaining on Monday, the next day, when their kids didn't play as much. Like, well, I don't understand why my kids didn't play. Did you read the PDF that we sent, the document with the rules and expectations? They're like, no. Well, you should have, because it says if you arrive later than whatever the allotted time was, probably an hour, and we give some leniency with this, then your child's going to have diminished game time. And they're like, well, we don't think that's fair. That's fine, you don't think it's fair, but those are the rules. We have to respect the rules and understand that there's a process. And then their argument was, well, our hotel was 40 minutes away. Well, that's not my fault. You should have picked a hotel that was 10 minutes away or 15 minutes away. Or if you didn't and you still had to plan for the 40 minutes, then make sure that you set up your allotted travel time so you don't become late or significantly late. Like I'll give like a 10 to 15 minute window if we say, hey, be there at 8 a.m. Quick example. Then we'll give another 15 minutes. But if you're beyond that, that's a problem, right? So and it should be fair for everybody to know. But doing those types of things help relay the expectation. You're going to have to give reminders, but I think that's very important. Number 9. So here's my personal belief when it comes to tactics. So parents always ask tactics. Like the overwhelming majority will say, well, I want my child to learn tactics. We're playing 77, 99. My child needs to know what to do. This is my personal opinion. Use it if you think it's important to you or it works for you. When I'm working with low to average skilled players, so these are, again, not top players. This is grassroots. I don't touch tactics. I do not touch tactics. I want to make sure that's abundantly clear. So if they don't have the level to dribble, play 1v1 and beat somebody, pass with right and left foot, and also receive right and left foot, what tactics am I going to teach that can actually help them? And I mean tactics, right? How do you position yourself? Why do you position yourself? How do we move through the thirds? I don't do any of that because I feel like it's more important to develop skills in 1v1, 2v2s, or 3v3s, or up to that level to help them get those skills. And once they have the skills, then I can teach it. But it's like doing math. If my players can't do 1 + 1, so in the classroom, my students can't do 1 + 1, how could I expect them to do multiplication, division, fractions, geometry, algebra? You pick. If you don't have the basics, you can't do greater expanded things. Same principle here. Okay, this is now number 10. So here's my training strategy based on 3 sessions a week for low to average skill players. So I have the age development curriculum that I've created. Again, it took me 8.5 years to build and actually formulate. And what I've been able to do with this is create a formula for low to average skilled players to help them improve quickly. Let's say I train Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Monday, Wednesday, we are following the age development curriculum basically to a T. There might be some flexibility, but overall, follow the plan. If we get to Thursday and we know we have a game that weekend or a tournament, then we will add some flexibility when it comes to creating structure. So I'm not necessarily saying tactics, but I will show, hey, we want to play 2-3-1. This is what it's going to look like so we understand. Take 10 to 15 minutes to do that. And then maybe I have them, it's called function, where you have them move the ball quickly to get it to goal. But I'm not coaching them tactically through it. I'm just showing them the broader scale to say, hey, here's what it looks like. Here's the formation. And yeah, now I still do about half age development curriculum at that point in that session, but it's just giving them also the bigger picture to think bigger scale a little bit. And parents love that because they want to see their kids on the bigger field, which is kind of silly to think about, but that's besides the point. Now, point 11. Always have a backup plan. You are in pay to play as a coach. You're in grassroots. You might have 12 players on your team. But one of the biggest lessons that I learned very quickly was to always have a backup plan. So I would spend on average 3 hours a week planning practices. Still do. Okay? But then I never had a backup plan. So I would go to practice and I would say, okay, let's use the example of 12 players. I have 12 players on the team. I would anticipate 10 showing up, but then I would get the practice and there'd be 6. Well, that blows up my plan pretty quickly, and I never had a backup. And I would just get really, really mad and really frustrated. And I would send a message and be like, where are the kids? And one parent would say, oh, couldn't make it. My other child had a game. Oh, couldn't make it. They're doing homework. Or this kid couldn't make it because X. They're sick. Whatever. And they don't communicate. So having a backup plan means you can still scratch your entire practice and just go to the backup plan. And like that for me is huge, right? And I'll give you an example. I made a mistake today. So this morning I had 4 players training. One of them was a professional player. The other 3, one is a Division I college player. The other one is a junior college player. And the other one is just a younger youth soccer player. So one pro who played in the MLS and played in Europe. One's a Division I college player. One's a junior college player. And one's a youth soccer player. Well, one of them texted me 3 minutes before the practice, hey, I'm not coming. Cool, you just blew up my entire plan. So I made a mistake of not having a backup plan, anticipating that this might happen. I should have had a backup plan in place where if I knew something was going to happen, bam, I had a backup and I could fix immediately. So I had to spend the next 15 minutes in my mind creating and adjusting the session. It still, in my opinion, went very well, but if I had a backup plan prepared, it would have been even smoother, right? So just knowing that you should have option 1 and option 2 helps tremendously because you're in pay to play and you're in grassroots. This stuff happens all the time. So just be aware of that. Okay, and like things that you'll see will happen, like I mentioned, players won't be attending due to whatever, sick, homework, other child, parent doesn't want to drive them to practice, traffic, you pick the reason. Weather issues. Oh, it's going to rain today, coach. You know how many times I've heard we're not coming to practice because it's going to rain? What? It's an all-weather sport. It's okay. Lightning, I understand. Rain? It's rain. Okay, next one. Players arriving late. Parents taking players early and not wanting to go. It's just like anything can happen. So for grassroots, here's my go-to plan. 1v1 games. 1v1 play. Second one, skill competition. So some sort of technical based activity, competition wise. So like dribbling circuit, Okay, final one, 2v2, 3v3 tournament, what we call competitive play, where they're competing against each other, winner stays on. That's my grassroots go-to session all the time. And I haven't even talked about like desired outcome or coaching points, but that's just from an activity standpoint, that's what my go-to is. Now, depending on what team I'm working with, then I can create my desired outcome and coaching points so I have a backup ready to go like that. Okay, point 12, at least I think it's 12. So 3 steps to plan practice. This is very, very important. And to summarize this point, I was hired as a consultant for an organization to help educate or train coaches. So I was doing coaching reviews and I gave a curriculum and I said, hey, here's what I want you guys to implement. Good luck. I'm saying good luck. I mean, there's way more in-depth stuff to this, but I'm just explaining. Here's what I want you to implement. This is what we do. This is how we do it. You go ahead and run it. So there were coaches running the curriculum basically to a T, like to the point, very well, sharp, okay? Then I would do the individual review. And I would say, hey, walk me through this. What were you trying to achieve? Many of them were like, I don't know. I just followed what you said to do. Like, okay. So what I learned from that was they didn't have what I call a desired outcome. So this is what I do. It may work for you. It may not work for you. Somebody might call it something else. But the first thing that I do in 3 steps is I create and I identify what is my desired outcome from the practice. So not the exercise, the entire practice. What do I want to see from the practice? What is my desired outcome? So this is like, what is the objective? That's a better word. What is the objective I want to see the players achieve from the practice? Okay? Then, and think of that like targeted learning. Whatever the topic is, targeted learning. So example, improve 1v1 attacking to goal. That's my desired outcome. That's what I want to work on for the practice. Let's build that. So then what I do next is I create my coaching points. These are the things that I'm going to be telling the players. So like just a quick example again, I would say direct, speed, skill. So you want to go directly at the opponent. So you pick up the ball, attack them 1v1. You go straight at them. Then you want to use speed or change of speed. So being able to go slower and faster. Okay, and then you have to make the decision why. Okay, there will be skill. Well, the only reason why you're going to use a skill is because you need to either beat or get away from an opponent. You can't run straight through them, but you go at them using change of speed, use a skill, and get out. So those would be like my coaching points. So I would be telling the players that to help get them to the desired outcome. And then the final thing that I would do would be create my activities. So I have my desired outcome, I have my coaching points, then I create my activities, the warm-up, the technical activation, the targeted practice, and then the competitive play. Whatever I'm looking for the day, I then do it in that order. Have there been times I do it different ways? Yes, but I found for me, desired outcome, coaching points, activities. Done. Okay? Point 13 now. Now, this one, you're going to hear me talk about it again. Fun. The most important thing is to provide the best soccer experience in grassroots for players 5 to 12. You could even expand it probably 13, 14. But to provide the best experience for these kids. So, from my experience of being in grassroots for 10 years, coaching, I've found this to work very well. I'm going to highlight something I said earlier, just to reemphasize the point. 1v1 games. Transition to a technical challenge. So like dribbling, juggling, passing, whatever it is. Challenge. Could be shooting as well. I like to do a lot of dribbling stuff. And then the final piece, competitive play, 2v2, 3v3 tournament. But you're going to be like, where's the 77? Where's the 99? I'm not touching it. I'm talking about grassroots. I'm trying to meet the needs of the kids. So by following this model, kids get 500% more touches. They have way more fun. They score way more goals. They get to celebrate like their favorite players and do like Mbappe will go like this, and Messi will go like this, and Ronaldo will do the sue. You know how many times kids do the sue at practice? They want to celebrate like their favorite players, right? So just things like that they get to do. They get to attack, they get to defend, they get to transition. They're not stuck playing a single position. Like that for me is just so rewarding to have kids have fun and learn, okay? Point 14. We may want our model, our country to be more like Europe, But our culture and playing pool, so the playing level, is just not close. And the gap, in my opinion, even though contrary to popular belief, is actually widening. It's not closing. Do you have the exception to the rule like a Christian Pulisic, a Gio Reyna? Yes. But that is an exception to the rule, not the rule. And the reason why they're the exception is because they had parents with heritage. They knew what it took and what it takes, and they had contacts to help them get out. That's not the average soccer player. So, when you're a grassroots coach, I always try to focus on the needs of the kids. And if you do that, especially with low to average skilled players, you will notice a ridiculous difference in 90 days. Like, just ridiculous. Like, insane difference in 90 days. So, I truly believe in this training formula. This will be point 14, which is training formula, development formula. 1v1 to 3v3. Like, that for me is so undervalued in this country from a parent and coaching perspective, because we want them to play 7v7. If our culture was like Europe or South America, 7v7, 9v9, going to 11v11 would be the perfect model. However, we're not Europe, we're not South America, we're North America, we're the United States of America. We don't have the same culture, we don't have the same level, we don't have the same desire. We need to meet the needs of the kids. The best way, in my opinion, is through this. 1v1 to 3v3, and this is where I found the greatest success. Once you build that, you then go to 5v5. Once you have that, you go to 7v7. Then you go to 9v9. You go to 11v11. Whatever the duration that it takes is fine. And I even created an entire program called Beast, like I mentioned already, which the focus is unleashing the beast through 1v1, 2v2s, 3v3s. Primarily, 99% of the programming is that. And like I will highlight again, in a program like that, they're going to have more fun. They're going to score way more goals. They're going to take way more risk in 1v1, which means their creativity is going to go up. They're going to play all sides of the game. They're going to attack, defend, and transition in between. They're not going to play one single position. They're going to play multiple positions. And then they're going to also be creative, which means they're going to use skill. They're going to try different things. And if you've ever seen kids that are afraid, the ball becomes like a hot potato. They get it and they release it in a millisecond. They don't even think about it. It's just gone. Whereas kids that you can help teach them to be creative, they can then dribble, they can then pass, and they'll do things you'll be like, wow. Like, you can't coach certain details. So, like, example would be, there was a player that I was working with, and he was playing 1v1. His back was to goal, he's protecting the ball, and he did some people call it like a V turn or an L turn. So he pulled it, I call it a maestro. He pulled it from behind his, protecting the ball, he pulled it and pushed it behind his leg, and it went in the goal. If he was only playing 77 or he had a joystick coach or a yeller or a screamer, he would never have done that. But because we've given him the freedom to make his own decisions and take those risks, he figured it out. And it's like, just let the kid make his own decision. If I was yelling at him or joysticking him or screaming at him, he wouldn't have done that. And it's because I gave him, and I've told all the kids, hey, take risk. If you lose, you lose. Take the risk. But like, we look at life. This is one of my biggest issues with school, like public school. It's not teaching you to take risk. It's teaching you how to fit into a system. Well, you don't become a top level player or a top person in life if you're not taking risk. So we're taking the ability for kids to learn that it's okay to take risk away. Even in football, the result doesn't matter at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. Do we want to win? Sure, we want to win. But what they do is more important than the outcome. So, point 16. You might find this quite interesting and surprising, probably. So, at the beginning of this video audio, I mentioned that I've trained professional players. I've trained the generational talent out of Brazil, or one of them. And what's interesting is I got a phone call from Nani, right? Luis Nani calls me. We're setting up some sessions. This is 2 days before the first practice. And I asked him, Nani, what do you want to work on? He goes, Kyle, I want to work on technique. Dribbling, passing, receiving, finishing. And I'm like, huh, that's it? Yeah, that's it. I want to get sharp. Okay. Yeah, cool. I'm like, that's right up my alley. Nothing else? Nope, that's it. Okay. Yeah, done. No problem. So all of them, all they want to work on is technique, sharpening their technique at full speed. Cool. That's it. Where I'm going with that is fundamentals are so important. We neglect fundamentals. And if you neglect fundamentals, it's a prerequisite of getting to a high level. College at a minimum, prerequisite. Now, are there exceptions to the rule? Sure, there's low-level colleges, and there might be an example of, one college picking up like a 6'5" forward who has no skill but he's fast as hell. Sure, there's an exception to every rule. Cool. But primarily, the general rule is gotta have skill. And when I'm talking to Nani and he's saying that, I'm like, even a guy that's won a Premier League, a Champions League, and the European Championship with Portugal wants to work on technique. Cool. So I'm like, that's easy, done. I talked to the generational talent, him and his dad, before I trained him the first time. What do you guys want to do? Technique. Okay, yeah, let's do it. Now he's a little bit younger, so it makes more sense, but I'm just like, done, let's get to work, right? It's that simple. Even at their level, they want to work on fundamentals. I trained Benji today, this morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. What does he want to work on? Fundamentals. Cool. Let's get to work. Right? It's not rocket science. Okay, next point. So this one's going to be interesting, and you might have commentary about it. This is my technical development methodology in order. 7 actions or 7 steps. Okay. So this is specifically referring to low to average skill level players. This is not your top talent. This is not your generational talent. These are, players with little experience, low game intelligence, low background in sport or in the sport. And the first one is core skill. Players need to learn basic ball manipulation, ball mastery of the ball, whatever word you want to describe it, core skill. That's what I call it. Second step, dribbling and 1v1 skill. How to attack an opponent. Use skills, so like changes of direction, stops and starts, fakes and feints, and escape moves. Skills to go against an opponent. 3, 1v1 skill. So this is actually the implementation of 1v1. So you practice these skills, you need to actually apply the skills. That's what this step's about. That's step 3. Step 4 now is basic decision making. So when I reference basic decision making, it's, do you dribble? Do you pass? Why? Well, you need to make a decision. There's multiple facets to this, but quick example would be, let's say you're doing a 2v1 situation. Attacker with the ball, first attacker, first defender. 2v1. Well, I as the attacker have to make a decision based on what the opponent is giving me. And then also, what is the position of my teammate? So if my teammate's in a better position than me with an open passing lane, give the ball. If there's not an open passing lane and or my teammate's not in a better position and or the defender is trying to block the pass, take the dribble. Right? That's a lot of information to think about, but those are the thought processes that the player has to think about and then make a decision on based on the circumstances. Next one, 5, passing, which actually goes hand in hand with 6, receiving. You would think that'd be flipped, but you can have the ball at your feet and not control the ball well, but still be able to make a pass. They really go hand in hand, so they could be flipped. I felt passing should go first, then receiving, because you have to pass to receive. And then 7 is advanced decision making. Now, this means the player has a higher skill level of playing at a higher level. So they could go to, for example, technically they're good enough to go to MLS Next or ECNL or whatever division, whatever league, whatever, they have the level to do so. And that's the order. So I'll just quickly highlight again. 1, core skill. 2, dribbling and 1v1 skill. 3, 1v1 implementation. 4, basic decision making. 5, is passing, 6 is receiving, 7 is advanced decision making. Remember, this is for low to average skill players. Now, this would be point 17. This is huge because I see it all the time. And in fact, it's crazy. I just posted a video that I saw this morning. I just had to watch the first 15 seconds. And it was about child development. How do you prepare or develop mentally strong kids? And I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it said, you have to let the kids make mistakes and learn from their mistakes. Stop trying to solve all their problems. If you try to solve all their problems, they won't learn to be mentally tough or strong. So what I wrote here is, or my thought process is, if you joystick or make all the decisions for the players, so that could be a parent or coach, they don't learn to think for themselves. They don't. So if I tell little Johnny to shoot, little Johnny's going to shoot. And it's funny because I remember I was at a 3v3 tournament a month ago, just watching, and you could see a kid had the ball, he's dribbling. It's a 2v1 versus the final defender. Parents on the sideline screaming, shoot it, shoot, shoot. And he shouldn't have shot it. He should have kept dribbling, attract the opponent, and then release the ball to the teammate. What did the kid do because he heard shoot? He shot it and he missed. And I'm like, if the parents just let the kid continue to make his own decision, he probably would have done what I just said, where he dribbled to the defender, or at least attracted enough pressure from the defender where he would have had to commit. Then you play the pass, and then you score the goal. But because the parents wanted the kid to shoot, the kid heard that thought process, the decision was made for him by the parents, he decided to shoot. And I'm like, it's so backwards. Just let the kids make their own decisions. Now, how do you correct behavior? So let's say that they made a mistake. Well, or I should even take a step back from that. I should say, this is what I have found to be the best way to help kids learn. 2 things. The first one is, how do I explain this to you? The first one is, the best method I have found for correcting behavior is you let the player make the mistake, and then you go guide them through it. Now sometimes, and the key thing with this could be, sometimes you need to have film. If you have film and you have a video of it, you can then show the player, because they might not understand, they might not remember, whatever it is. But if you can bring them the film and you can show it to them, and I've done this multiple times, where I will show them a clip, maybe it's from a game, maybe it's from training, whatever it is, and I say, hey, look what you did here. And they go, oh, I see it now. Right? That's what I was trying to tell you. So you're trying to guide them after making the mistake. So as a grassroots coach, this is what I have done is I let them go through the behavior, through the action, they make the mistake, then I go correct. Now, they might have to make it 1 or 2 times before I go correct, but sometimes it's like that bad or it needs attention immediately that I go correct on that point. But if they don't have that issue, then I let them go through it once or twice and see what they do next time. Because maybe the first time they made the bad decision because of pressure or circumstances outside, whatever it could be, sometimes you gotta let them do it 2 or 3 times and then they make those corrections on their own, or they still make the same mistake and then you go make the correction. But that's what I found, is when they make those type of mistakes, you do that. Now, is it an issue of joysticking or wrong information? It could be both, it could be one, it could be none. But I think the key thing is you have to let the kids make their own decision and then you help guide them through it. And like, let's use me at work. If I'm at work, do you think I want somebody behind my shoulder saying, Kyle, pick up the pen, write like this, okay, write A, write B, write C, write D. You need to write this email, you need to write it like this. No, I want to go through it myself. Once I finish it, perfect example is, if I'm writing an email, I used to send it to my friend, business partner, and he would correct it. Now I can just do it to AI. I write the email, I say, hey AI, correct this for me. Boom, any spelling errors fixed in 3 seconds. Right, so you can use that as a precursor piece here, just as a separate example. Okay, points, this should be 19. As a grassroots coach, I used to be that guy that would run a practice, run a session, I would stand on the outside. So the practice would be active inside this box, for example. Let's say it's possession, whatever it was, whatever they're doing, 1v1, 2v1s, game, okay? I would be on the outside providing some feedback. What I have found is, and remember, you're selling to parents, is the best thing you can do is be in the middle of the practice. And you don't just stand there with your hands in your pockets. You don't stand there crossed arms like this. You're in there and you're trying to push kids. Now, this is probably not always the best advice, especially if you want to go to higher levels, but being a coach in pay-to-play America, where the client or customer is the parent, you're constantly trying to sell your service to parents to make sure that you're the best fit. You need to be, in my opinion, on top of the players. So I'm not saying that you're telling them, like I said, not joysticking, but you're like, hey, good try, keep going. Hey, do the next one again, keep pushing. Hey, keep going, right? You're giving them those little nuggets, and then obviously you can give coaching interactions and behaviors that need to be corrected. But it's being in the middle of the practice to give them those pushes like that. Okay, so I've realized over years of doing this, parents want to see the coach engaged. They want to see them dynamic. They want to see them active. You standing there on the sideline, hands in your pockets, doesn't look good. You standing on the sideline, arms crossed like this, doesn't look good. You standing there on the sideline saying nothing, from a parent perspective, doesn't look good. It doesn't sell. You're trying to sell your service to make sure that you're continuously a good fit. So, knowing that, I don't do it all the time, but 60 to 80% of my sessions, I'm in the middle of practice, pushing, demanding more, giving a little bit of feedback, some coaching points, coaching interactions, whatever it is. Okay, point 20. My experience tells me, 10 years of doing this as a grassroots coach, the greatest tool you can give a player is the freedom and ability to dribble. Or I should say, the ability and freedom to dribble. What does that mean? You give them the flexibility, the freedom, and the opportunity to be okay with dribbling. Well, what happens is they're going to make mistakes. But you have to reinforce it. It's okay to make mistakes. But the reason why dribbling for me is so important, and we want grassroots players to be taught this, if you look at the highest level in the world, right? So Champions League, World Cup, you pick your level. All the top players dribble and pass. So even center backs. I've even seen, and I'm sure you have too, goalkeepers like Ederson, Allison, have a ball at their feet, they're being pressed, they have to use a skill to get out and then release the ball. You're going to tell me dribbling's not important? Even for a goalie? One of the best defenders in the world right now, in my opinion, Van Dijk, is phenomenal at breaking pressure on the dribble. He will dribble the ball to a certain point, and then pressure comes, he'll either beat him on the dribble or release it. But you have to dribble to attract pressure first to make that decision. So the special players are the ones who know when to dribble and when to pass. The key thing with this, though, is it takes an incredibly long amount of time for a player to develop the ability to dribble, to feel confident to dribble, and then go through so much like trial and error that they realize when is the correct time to dribble and when is the correct time to pass. Well, that's not like some miracle formula that happens in 3 minutes. That's taught over years, which is why when I'm referencing grassroots here as grassroots coaches, I'm saying like 5 to 12. Right? This is the time to let kids dribble and have fun and be free and make their own decisions, because it's a perfect example to allow them to experiment, to express, to try, to be creative with no pressure. One of the biggest issues we have in this country, in my opinion, is we don't have a lot of top dribblers. But let's look at the players that are top dribblers in our country. Pulisic, Gio Reyna. 2 great examples. What did they have? They had parents with football heritage that knew dribbling was so important for them to have, and the ability to go take people on and to make mistakes and be okay with making mistakes. Because for sure, when you dribble, especially as a young kid, you're just getting into it, you're going to lose the ball a lot more than you're going to gain it. But I'll give you a perfect example. We had a tournament 3 weeks ago. I had a 2015 playing 2014, and in one play, this kid dribbled the ball, or picked up the ball. He dribbled 4 players, crossed it, and then we scored. Well, had we joysticked him or berated him or yelled at him, he would have never had the confidence or ability to dribble like that. So having, and this is over the course of more than a year at this point, but we give kids the freedom to dribble and take people on. Do they lose the ball a lot? Sure. Yeah. But that to me was a special moment of this kid dribbling 4 people. He dribbled 4 other players as a 2015 playing 2014. Crossed the ball to his teammate, and then they scored. That was like, everybody was like, wow. Like, that was just ridiculously impressive. And we have to give players the ability to have the ability to develop and have freedom, and, in my opinion, creativity reigns supreme. Like, we're definitely moving in a direction, unfortunately, in this country where creativity is not at the forefront. And I think that's a big mistake. We need to give players the opportunity to dribble and make mistakes on the dribble. Because when they start over dribbling, they either learn that was the wrong decision on their own, or you can help guide them through that. Hey, you shouldn't have dribbled here. You should have passed here. So you can freeze frame. You can say, freeze, as a grassroots coach. Recreate the scenario and show them the other option. And somebody just brought up, parent education is vital. Yes, you're completely right, it can. I 100% agree with you. This is half the battle, right? Probably more than half the battle, to be honest. But, that's why I have so much content for parents and coaches, especially grassroots, because it's like, this is what we're talking about. And it's very important to understand it. Okay? And point 21 is, and I recommend every coach does this, especially if you want to be in grassroots, but one of the best decisions I ever made as a coach was my actual first coaching job, like where I got paid for real, wasn't a lot of money, but I got paid for real, was I was coaching 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. I did that for like close to a year, where I coached 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds almost every day, maybe 4 to 5 times a week. And like, there are 3 main things that I learned from that. The first one is patience. You have to be super calm and understanding of 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, especially 2 and 3. Dude, the motor function they have and the mental capacity that a 2-year-old has is obviously not very high. They can't pay attention very well. They don't understand concepts very well. They're just kicking the ball. And that's okay. But don't expect a lot from them. That's why I say patience has to be very high. Next one is age-appropriate sessions, right? I can't expect a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old to play 5v5. I can't expect them to play 4v4. And all the games that they play have to be like fun, like what's sharks and minnows, duck crossing, duck goose, right? Whatever it is, right? You got to make sure the games are fun. And it's hard working with those kids. Like, it's not easy at all. It's very hard because the kids don't listen. They need their parents. They're crying. They don't follow the instructions because they're 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds. They don't understand anything, right? To a point where they need to. But it helped me learn a lot. And then third one would be, it helped me learn how to manage children, right? So everybody says, well, Kyle, you're not a parent. You're right, I'm not a parent. But one of the first thing I did outside of coaching players, like I did some private trainings and stuff, but I mean like my first real coaching job was 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds. That really prepared me for working with kids and helped set the expectation that it's the way that you talk to them, the way that you engage with them is more important than the practice. Like, that's so good, I'm going to say it again. The way that you engage and interact with kids is more important than the actual practice for young kids, especially 2 to 12 years old, 100%. Like, without even question. Like, it's more important than what your desired outcome is, what your coaching points are, what your session looks like. It's more important to have that type of connection. And then I'll give you a bonus one, so this is really a fourth one. Fun is the key. Fun has to be the key. If it's not fun, they're not going to want to come back. Like, you should be checking, hey, do you guys want to come back to the next practice? Hey, did you have fun today? Yes. What did you learn today? Oh, I learned that I need to dribble with my shoelace. Cool. Do you want to come back to the next practice on Tuesday? If it's not, yes, coach, then you probably didn't do your job. Now, there could be some external factors, right? But 80% of cases is the kids are going to want to come back to practice if they have fun. So those are my 21 lessons as a grassroots coach. What I will tell you is I have a super big announcement I'm going to be making on July 5th. Huge announcement for grassroots coaches. I don't want you to go through the same pain, mistakes, suffering, anguish, whatever words you want to use that I had to go through. My job is to help you guys make better decisions. And on July 5th, I have a big announcement coming. And I think you guys are going to absolutely love it. And I hope you find tremendous value from that. I hope you found tremendous value from this video. If you did, please share it and be ready for July 5th. It's coming. And have a great day, guys. Have a great night. And I'll talk to you soon. Ciao.